There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yes!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cameron Chronicles. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, here joined again by my co-host, Dudley. Caleb, how are you doing, man?
Good to be back. Basketball season's upon us.
Yeah, basketball season is here. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Caleb and I took over this podcast last year and had a great time. They let us back on. We're doing it again this year. If you've been listening across football, we also have the Football Blue Devil Blitz podcast that's going on throughout the season for football, so definitely check that out if you're a Duke football fan. But this is our preview episode for Duke basketball, so we'll talk a little bit about the two exhibitions that just happened and then preview the slate for the season, players to look out for, maybe some underrated ones, and then talk a little bit about the ACC as a whole and kind of where Duke fits within that. So yeah, super excited to get started. But first, this podcast is brought to you by the Duke Stores. Support your favorite Duke team. Duke Stores is home to the only collection of merchandise in the world that comes to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all your Duke merch needs. And yeah, there's a lot of great stuff there. So we'll start out with these exhibition games. Duke's played two and kind of similar scores in both, which we were talking about is really surprising. So Duke played Lincoln, school out of Pennsylvania, and Duke won 107-56 in that one. And then for the Brotherhood Run charity exhibition game, brought in Bobby Hurley for a Cameron reunion. But as our Sophie Levinson said in her gamer, Duke was not very charitable on the court. Duke won 103-47 there. So we'll start with Lincoln, or we can kind of combine these both in the sense of takeaways. But Caleb, when you watch these two games, obviously there's a lot of hype around this Duke team, and it looked the part for sure. What impressed you the most about Duke through these first exhibition games?
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me and something that's not really in the box score is just how hard they were playing these exhibition games. There was so many times that they were diving on the floor, especially against Arizona State, even up like 30, 40 points, diving on the floor, making plays. And I think that just kind of speaks to the mindset of this team. And we've heard guys and Shire say it too, that there's kind of a different air around this team this year. And I think that's definitely definitely seems to be the case. Cooper Flagg came out in the Arizona State game wanting to absolutely posterize somebody just at the very beginning of the game. I think going off that, I think the team defense has been pretty strong. Obviously, so there's gonna be some lapses early in the season with how many young guys they have, and they haven't played a lot of games together as a unit. But obviously, holding Arizona State to 47 when Duke scored, what was it, 103?
Yeah.
That's kind of unreal.
Yeah.
I think it starts the year 71st in Ken Palm. They're not like a bad team by any circumstance, and so I was very, very impressed by Duke so far.
Yeah, let's start on the defensive end, and then we'll talk about offense in a second. Obviously, defense is, appearing to be a strength of this team with just the length. Nobody on this team is shorter than 6'5", which definitely helps defensively. And then when you have guards like Proctor and Foster who can anchor that defense in the backcourt, and then just a rim protector in Kaman Malawach, not to mention Cooper Flagg's defensive prowess, this team is really one that'll be strong defensively. Against Lincoln to start off, they were a little bit handsy in the sense that they committed a lot of fouls early on. We're reaching, swatting down, and that can be, expected when a team gets excited, wanting to block everything, and that's normal. But I was really impressed with how they responded both in the second half of that game and for most of the Arizona State game. There wasn't, nearly as many fouls. So that'll be one thing I think Duke should watch out for, because defensively, teams are going to really have trouble scoring. It was noticeable against Arizona State in that when guard would drive to the paint, maybe get past a guard. Malawach would completely affect the shot, or Flagg would block one. And then, just the ball pressure that Proctor and Foster can put on someone can be really dangerous. So I think for me, on the defense, the fouls are going to be the thing to watch, but this is going to be a fantastic defensive team.
Yeah, when you're I guess we can say backup center. I think he'll probably be the backup. Was on the All ACC defensive team last year.
Exactly, yeah.
And would he lead the conference in blocks? Maybe
blocks. His deflection numbers are insane.
Unreal.
Number one KenPom player.
His stocks are through the roof.
Yeah.
And so the stats love him. Shire obviously loved him. So I think Malik Brown and Kaman Malawach are going to be a great duo down there all year long.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Shire did a great job in the portal getting those defensive needs. Sion James is obviously Sion James. And Mason Gillis can provide a good 3-and-D type of prospect for you. So I think I mean, the biggest jump, in my opinion, from the high school to the collegiate game is really defending these much tougher players to guard and knowing where to go. Team defense is sometimes, you learn it in high school, but it's
Yeah.
not, sometimes defense can be optional. But you have a player like Cooper Flagg who's just naturally good at defense, which is good, but sometimes a lot of the freshmen aren't all the way there yet. So by bringing those portal guys in, that'll be big for Duke. Turning to the offensive side, I was impressed these two games by how much Duke shared the ball. That was one thing that I really thought was good. In Arizona State game, it was a lot of swinging the ball across the perimeter and against Lincoln. In the first half, the shots just didn't go in. I wouldn't say there were like so many better shots in the second half. I mean, obviously when Knippel's hitting whatever he touches, that obviously helps. But they were moving the ball, and then the first play of the game was a beautiful design in which Khan kind of came off a screen and then threw an alley to Malawach. And just those, like, the way this team shares the ball was really impressive to me. And I think that'll be a big key for this offense going forward because, if you can move it, it can be really tough to defend.
Yeah, going off of that, you just talked about that first play, and I think from the time countdown happened, I know that was like almost a month ago now, but it seems like Common's really come a long way on the offensive end since then. He looks a lot more comfortable in those two exhibition games. And they're not afraid to go to him, it seems like now. I mean, they're kind of feeding him down low, and obviously he's hard to deal with. I mean, he's 7'2", and so he's definitely a problem down there. And he had 8 points against Arizona State and 12 rebounds, which is, I mean, great. If Duke gets that from him all year, then they'll be in a good spot. You just talked about Khan hitting shots. That second half as a team, they could not miss.
Ridiculous, yeah.
Well, they went on like a 15 to overrun at a point and just could not miss. Khan had the 4-point play where he got knocked down on the 3 and made it. I think, and speaking further of this, I think this is probably the best shooting team Duke's had in a while. I mean, at least on paper, you would think they are. I mean, Khan obviously has looked the part. Mason Gillis, shot like 45% last year at Purdue. Sion's capable. He's 3 for 4 against Arizona State. Tyrese Proctor and Cale Foster are obviously both capable. Cooper Flagg is capable. Darren Harris might be the best shooter on the entire team, just off of what we've heard. And so I think they definitely have the perimeter shooting to kind of give Common and Cooper Flagg some space to work down there.
Yeah, and I mean, in today's game, when 3-point shooting is just so much of it, it's really like, you see the first half against Arizona State, and that could be one point of not necessarily concern, but like, if the shots aren't falling, this is for any team, this isn't a Duke-specific thing, but, if your shots aren't falling, that really limits you offensively. Teams can kind of pack line in, Virginia, and kind of, try to make it difficult. But in the second half, I mean, it was crazy. It was just a barrage, an avalanche, I think is what we called it, of 3-point shots. But even so, when the shots aren't falling, I think this team does have the ability to score inside with, obviously Cooper and Common, but the way I think Caleb Foster is a great driver of the ball, so is Tyrese. We'll talk about them in a second. But this team's got the pieces and really looked the part throughout these first 2 exhibition games. Again, just exhibitions. They'll be moving on to the regular season Monday. We'll talk about that. But looking at this roster, kind of top to bottom, who are some players that you're looking for? Maybe some underrated ones, maybe not underrated, but players that you really think can be the X factors for this team this season and can take it to where it wants to go.
Yeah, I don't know where you're going to go, but I'm going to go Sion James for mine. I think probably the best portal ad Shire maybe guy out of the portal. 3-year captain at Tulane, built like a freight train. I mean, but obviously, in the Arizona State game, he played point guard some. They pulled Foster and Proctor out. He ran point. He's 6'6", 220, and can run the point like that. And you talk about getting to the lane. I think he's maybe the best slasher they have at the guard position, and great defender. He had 3 assists, 1 turnover against Arizona State, a steal, 3 for 4 from 3, 5 for 7 overall. So I think just having that leadership and another guard that's physically imposing is a big key for Duke.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 2, so I guess that's kind of cheating. We talked about him earlier, but I'm just like Malik Brown. I really think can be the piece that completely changes a team because and maybe he'll start, maybe he'll not. He might play starting minutes regardless, just because I think him and Common might be kind of playing similar minutes.
Yeah,
regardless of who starts and who doesn't. I don't really think that matters, but he can play down low at Syracuse. He's what, 6'8", 6'9",
6'8", maybe.
Yeah, maybe 6'9", maybe, and he's comfortable playing that center position, which obviously is hard when you have to defend 7-footers. But we mentioned KenPom, loved him last year, and Shire raves about the way he's able to get deflections, and even if Duke plays zone, like Malik can be great in that sense, like in a 1-3-1 or a 2-3, and just a guy who can get rebounds and get those hustle plays and, can make those one or two plays that make a difference. I mean, he didn't score against Arizona State, but I don't think he mattered. I mean, he got 3 offensive rebounds, which is huge. And he can be a facilitator as well, somebody who can throw it inside and kick it out too. So definitely Malik. And then my second one is Proctor, because obviously, last year he had a little bit of ups and downs. I really think a lot of that did have to do with the ankle injury that he suffered against Georgia Tech, I believe, first semester last year.
Georgia Tech, yep, on the road.
On the road, and he came back from that, but it was still kind of lingering. And I think for Proctor, he can be someone who really gets back in the scoring column as effective, but also facilitates well. So his shot is good. He can score at all 3 levels. I mean, he's 6'5", and he'll probably be defended by the smallest player on the team now. Like, I mean, him or Foster, maybe.
Yeah.
They'll be interchangeable, and like that can help him a lot because he can just rise over top of anyone who's kind of guarding him for that shot. And so I think that'll contribute to his scoring a lot. And then obviously facilitating in his leadership abilities will be great. It seems like the team really loves him. There was a clip today that went out of him like talking to Khan and like encouraging him on his shot. So I think Tyrese, both intangibly and basketball wise, will be players to look for.
Yeah, I think going back to Brown, just pulled up his stats from last year. He was 3rd in the country in effective field goal percentage, 71%. He led the ACC in steals, 71, 11th in rebounding, 9th in offensive rebounding, and 14th in block shots. And then all ACC defensive team, he had 3rd most votes. So I think obviously, when you bring in someone like that to not be the starting center, maybe, I think it's a much better than what Duke's tried out a backup center in the last couple of years.
Yeah. So those exhibition games, were won, but now Duke will be moving on to the regular season. It starts off with 2 home contests against Maine, a little Cooper Flag homecoming, and Army. Both teams that, Duke should win pretty comfortably, but good practice to get the team kind of, real game practice in Cameron Indoor Stadium in the sense that, this one counts. And then after that, Duke has a tough non-conference schedule. I mean, you go to Kentucky the week after in the Champions Classic over in Atlanta. We'll face Arizona and Kansas and Vegas, and then next semester is Illinois. But through these non-conference, we'll talk about kind of the non-conference slate. What are you going to be looking for Duke in this in these tough games, and what do you want to see from this team to prepare it for the ACC slate moving forward?
Yeah. Obviously they're not shying away this year at all in the non-conference scheduling. Kentucky, we'll talk about Kentucky in a little bit, maybe by themselves, but Kentucky's always tough. Kansas is the number 1 team in the country to start the year. That'll be a fun neutral site game over Thanksgiving break. Auburn, I love Auburn. I love Bruce Pearl.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be a fun one coming to Cameron. Arizona revenge game from last year is a fun one, and then maybe my favorite one out of the bunch is the Illinois February game. Duke at MSG has obviously become a tradition of a sort. They call it Cameron North for a reason, and but I think in February particularly to play a team that's going to be probably a top 25 team all year, I would think. In that kind of environment, it'll be great to get the team ready for the tournament. In terms of what I want to see, I think the most interesting thing to me is how is Shire going to figure out the rotation for this team?
Yeah,
there's like 10 guys that can really play, and there's not really a drop off. So I'm really interested to see if he kind of cuts it down and who the odd guys out are. I would assume maybe it goes to 8. No Darren Harris, no Isaiah Evans at a point, but I think both of them could easily make their way in the rotation and play a decent amount of minutes. So that's what I'm looking for. Yeah,
it's a good point because against Lincoln, he kind of experimented with that starting lineup. Sion started, but against Arizona State, he started Proctor, Foster, Knipple, Cooper, and Common. I think that's probably your starting lineup week 1. Maybe Malik slides in there just depending on, I don't know, what he feels like. But I think that's kind of your group. And like you mentioned, those 3. I think the depth of this team, I mean, you could run 9 or 10 throughout the first semester even some of ACC play just to see what works. Because obviously, I mean, injuries might be a concern. And obviously, if Ngangba comes back and maybe he can provide a couple minutes of good center play interiorly, I don't know how long his injury is and how long he'll be out for. But that'll be interesting as far as lineups. And then, I agree. I think I just want to see this team in these, big environments, in these environments where everyone's going to kind of be dogging you. You're not going to get the support of Cameron Indoor, especially at Arizona. That's going to be a big one for me. Like, how do you play on the road? I think Duke's a better team than Arizona, but when you're playing against a whole student section and a whole crowd, neutral site games are a little bit different in that sense, but the road games for me are going to be important because you've seen these past 2 years, Duke has had talented rosters, but sometimes have struggled on the road, and a couple times in the ACC as well. So I think that'll be a good measuring stick to see how Duke performs in their first really, tough environment.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the schedule. It's a 2-week span where they play Arizona, Kansas, and Auburn.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's
like playing the Elite Eight, Final Four national championship game.
Right.
And so I think if I had to guess, I would assume they lose at least one, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be interesting to see if they have a lot of young guys, just how they bounce back from
Yeah, that's a great point.
potential loss.
A loss does really nothing in the sense that you want to keep your team confident, but a close loss in any of these games is not bad. So that's a good point. Like, how does this team mentally bounce back if they do lose, or if they just win through it? You never know.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Kentucky a little bit. This is going to be a fun game because Kentucky is one of those. Coach Cal is not going to be on the sideline.
Yeah.
This is one of those teams that completely have used the portal to completely change its roster, and so it's one of those experiment teams that I don't really know what to expect. So Mark Pope, you brought in as the coach from BYU. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's a great coach, and I really like the pieces individually that they brought in. Brought in Andrew Carr from Wake Forest, Kirk Risa, and then Kobe Bray from Dayton, and Lamont Butler from San Diego State.
Whole new team. Yeah.
Whole new team. Yeah. Great defenders. Some good scores here. So what are you looking for in this Kentucky team? And yeah, preview them a little bit.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me is I think they'll play a much different style than under Coach Cal.
Yeah.
Coach Cal down the stretch at Kentucky kind of went AAU style, just kind of tried out some freshmen and let them do them. And I mean, they've had guys get drafted over and over again. Like Reed Shepherd was, what did he go, third or fourth?
Yeah.
But I think this team will definitely be more interesting style. And I think Pope did a good job in the portal. Obviously, I think they replaced just about everybody. Jackson Robinson to me is who I think is their best player from BYU. I was surprised he didn't go to the draft, honestly. I think he's really, really good, a 6'6" guard. Lamont Butler obviously is more of the defensive of those two. So I think their backcourt is super tough. Kirk Risa, I guess maybe he'll come off the bench, maybe. Yeah. Really good. I mean, I think guard off the bench. Amari Williams, I really like. Drexel center, really good defender as well. So I think their team in general, Kobe Bray, I think is the best shooter in the country. Ooh. I know Duke was in on him, and then there was some rumors that maybe he asked for a lot of money that Duke couldn't provide. But I think he's a good piece for any team. Obviously, I really liked Dayton last year, and he was a big piece for them. So I think they definitely have a great roster, and we'll see if Pope can put it all together early on. They'll kind of have the same problem as Duke. We're trying to fit in a lot of new pieces in a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I mean, Mark Pope at BYU, he really ran a good offense. I mean, they were efficient. They scored a bunch of points. I mean, they shot. They were maybe one of the best 3-point teams in the country. Definitely. And like you said, I mean, bringing in Kobe Bray is going to be fantastic. I also think this team is a good matchup for Duke in the sense, a good challenge for Duke in the sense that they have long guards who can defend and who can challenge some of these like 6'5" plus talent that Duke has. And so I think that'll be really interesting to see because Duke can, score against, are going to be great against smaller teams and defend those smaller teams. But when you have mano a mano, like 6'6", 6'7" guards, how is Duke going to respond to that? Yeah, that'll be something to watch. And I think also just the chemistry of Kentucky early on might be not all the way there yet. So that might be something that Duke can take advantage of. Also, I mean, for Duke, the same thing. Like there's more continuity than Kentucky, but you still have so many different pieces. And even like somebody like Lamont Butler, who's on the shorter end, is still a great defensive player. So we'll see how this game goes. Do you think Duke comes out of here with a win in Atlanta?
Yeah, I think they do. I think their roster's a little bit better on paper than Kentucky, but I do think Champions Classic's always a fun one, and they have a night game this year, the late game. Is it a late game?
It's a late game.
Yeah, so it'll probably start at about 10:30. But I think Pope, I'm looking at the stats from last year, they were 14th in offense in the country. They were 8th from 2-point percentage. They were 4th in three-point attempts and 6th in assists per shot made. So it's a really stout system. I guess Robinson's the only guy who ran it last year that's still there. So we'll see if these guys kind of fit the same way that he's imagining. But I think on paper they're going to be a great matchup for Duke. But I do think Duke pulls it out early season.
I tend to agree. I'll be there in Atlanta, so hopefully it doesn't start at 10:30.
It definitely will, dude. But it's
okay. Well, will be a fun game nonetheless, and a great challenge for Duke to start. All right. Now, in the next half, we'll talk a little bit about the ACC. The media poll came out a few weeks ago. Duke was projected to win the league, got 42 first place votes, and was rounded out by North Carolina at 2, Wake Forest at 3, and Clemson at 4. Other notable teams in the area: NC State, Final Four team, is 8th projected. Louisville under Pat Kelsey, 9th. And then the newcomers, SMU is the highest of them, projected 13th, and then Cal and Stanford towards the bottom at 16 and 17. Looking at the ACC, Caleb, what teams are you kind of looking out for as, other contenders besides Duke that could really win this league?
Yeah, I kind of think I know who you're going to say, so I'll go with I'll go with Wake Forest. Wake Forest last year I thought they were a tournament team. They didn't make it. I think they're going to be really good again. Hunter Salas is somehow back. I don't even understand that, but that dude is unreal. I mean, definitely contender for ACC Player of the Year. Another team that kind of uses the portal. They've swapped around. Boopie Miller went to SMU.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It's hard to keep up
Andrew
nowadays.
Carr's at Wake.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up nowadays. But
I mean, not at Wake, at Kentucky.
Yeah, but I mean they've reloaded, and Forbes is obviously a great coach, and I think Duke has 2 games against them, right? One on the road, one at home.
2 games.
Yeah, I think I'll be covering the one in Winston-Salem. So, they got one first place vote. I don't know who that was. Might have been Connor O'Neill. Who knows? But so I think Wake definitely at 3rd is a definitely a contender for the league.
Yeah, I'll mention North Carolina a little bit because I think it's they're second. Obviously, RJ Davis coming back. I think Elliot Cadeau is kind of the X factor there. I think he takes a big step up in year 2. If he can get a shot behind the arc consistently, I mean that makes this backcourt really dangerous. The one thing that I think North Carolina will miss from Baycott is an offensive rebounding presence or just defensive rebounding in general. In their exhibition against Memphis, you kind of saw they had a lack of interior presence. In today's game, a 5-out offense is totally, good and efficient, and a lot of teams do it well. But the problem is if you aren't shooting very well and you need that interior presence, those offensive rebounds to get second chances, that's kind of the vulnerability of the 5-out. And so even on the defensive end, I think that'll be important. So if North Carolina can rebound the ball and Jalen Washington and others can step up, Van Leuven from Vandy, this can be a team that challenges Duke. But if you don't have that interior presence, I don't see how they can, beat Duke or go further in the NCAA tournament this year. And then another Elite 8 team, Clemson made it to the Elite 8 last year. I think this year also used the portal. Brownell used the portal really well, and I think this team's going to be one to watch. Chase Hunter and Ian Shefflin are both back on the second team All-ACC team. PJ Hall's gone, but there's a couple pieces. Got Jaden Zachary from Boston College, and then Jake Heidbreder, who took a red shirt from Air Force. He's a great shooter from beyond the arc. And then a name that Blue Devil fans will definitely know, Christian Reeves, is at Clemson. I don't think he's going to start, but he'll be an interesting developmental piece. So this team is going to be deep and long and a team that can really shoot the ball. So it'll be interesting to see if Clemson can, again, make a deep run in the tournament. I'm curious about Virginia.
I was about to say, I think a team that we haven't mentioned is Virginia, maybe for the opposite reason of being a contender.
They're 5th here, but
they're 5th here by a good margin. I mean, their 5 and 6 gaps pretty large, but obviously Tony Bennett right before the season announced that he's retiring.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of cited just kind of worn out with the new era of college basketball.
Yeah.
With how things are going with the portal and NIL and all those things. And so I think, they have a decent roster, but I think a lot of that poll is usually, banking on Bennett's ability to guide a team through when he's been there, he's guided them through the AC schedule with, a lot of grace, I think. But Jalen Worley, we already saw got in the portal.
Yeah.
All their players have a 30-day window from the day that Bennett retired to get into the portal. And there may be more, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's kind of hard to get in the portal right when everyone's about to play. So I know Worley's redshirting. And I guess most other guys would redshirt too if they left. But interested to see how the interim does at Virginia.
Power.
Yeah, TJ Power. We'll see if he gets to play. I don't really know. I haven't really seen what their starting lineup is, but maybe.
All right, let's look down a little bit. What are some teams that are not near the top that you think could either make some noise or, you saw NC State last year, went all the way through the conference tournament. Some team like that can disrupt in the conference tournament and maybe even March Madness.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame. Shrewsbury is a good coach, I think, and they've been killing on the recruiting trail, but that's a whole different story. But obviously having Marcus Burton back is huge for them.
Yeah.
Obviously maybe thought some team would try to come poach him out of the portal when he's an all-ACC guard at a team that's not, all that great. But third team all-ACC last year, ACC Rookie of the Year, 18 points a game. The dude could just flat out score. And then Braden Shrewsbury back as well, an absolute sniper as well. So their backcourt I think is really good. Julian Roper's back, senior guard. He started some games last year. They have some decent freshmen too, so I think Notre Dame definitely could be a team kind of in that bottom half that can make some noise.
Yeah, I have two. Well, one in the kind of top half that I think, I don't know, team might be forgetting a little bit about is Pittsburgh, coached by Blue Devil friend Jeff Capel. Obviously, they lost Henson, so that's going to be a big loss. But Pitt's got some guys and Carlton Carrington, but they have a good roster. Some athletes that are good. Ish Leggett and Jalen Lowe. Duke fans will remember Jalen Lowe for the game last year, but both of those guys are going to make a very good experienced backcourt that I think can score a lot of points. And then you have the Graham twins down low. Still there. And just some pieces around there. Zach Austin played a little bit and got a couple transfers as well. So this is a team that is going to be physical, that's going to be tough, that I think can, maybe make it back to the tournament. Kind of got did they make it last year? No, they didn't, right? I think they missed it. They either made it or like
I thought they were close. They were definitely on the bubble.
They were on the bubble, but I think they missed
Let's find out.
I think they were, yeah. But anyway, I think they can get back this year with that. And then towards the bottom of the ACC standings, I'm going to say Georgia Tech, which is kind of in the similar category as Notre Dame in the sense that they have some promising young players, new coach. What's up? Damon Stoudemire's back here in the next year at Georgia Tech. And I think their roster is really good as well. You got Bayan Dongo back, who is a really athletic, talented freshman who can, who can put up chunks scoring wise. And if he can get a shot, I mean, geez, like he'll be tough to stop. Nathan George is somebody who's also a great shooter, sophomore guard there. And then they have a couple other pieces that they're bringing back from last year. And they, it's funny, Georgia Tech last year, they would lose games that you would just shake your head at, and then they would beat Duke, Carolina, Clemson, all these teams, and you'd just be like, what? So I think for Georgia Tech, if you can win the games that you're supposed to and maybe steal a couple of those games against teams that are better than you on paper, that this can be a really successful season for the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, and I'll add one more since you went with two.
Yeah.
I think Louisville.
Yeah.
They were kind of the laughingstock last year with Kenny Payne, but I think they're calling it the Reviveville with Pat Kelsey, and
they're gonna be good.
Talk about a team that redid themselves in the portal. Holy crap! I don't know if they have a single player that's coming back. I'm serious. I don't know if they do. Terrence Edwards is the big name. Obviously, Duke fans will remember that name from last year in the tournament. JMU transfer, Sunbelt Player of the Year. He's a fifth-year senior now. Great player. Rain Smith, who Pat Kelsey brings over from College of Charleston. He led them in scoring last year. He's a sniper. He's all CAA second team last year. Javon Hadley, who was at Colorado last year, great big guard, a good rebounder. Chucky Hepburn, another kind of guy like that, great defender, kind of a tougher guard from Wisconsin. So I think, Louisville they're going to go from probably the bottom of the barrel to, a team that's really going to be tough. I know Duke has to go to the KFC Yum Center. Is that their first ACC game?
First ACC game, yep.
Yep, so that'll be a tough one, I think. So I think Louisville will be pretty good this year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I also think Louisville is going to be a good team, much improved, obviously, from the past couple of years. But this league, again, we talk about this every year. Kind of underrated at the start, comes in, gets a few teams in March that go further. I think this year is going to be, the middle half of the league is going to be really, really good. So that'll, I think, kind of bring up the stock of the league as a whole. But again, the ACC is going to be a talented league, and I think can get maybe more teams, maybe towards the 6 and 7 range into March. We'll see.
Yeah, don't tell John Rothstein.
Yeah, don't tell him that. All right. Well, so thank you guys so much for listening to this first episode. We have so much great coverage on the website. Our preseason print edition, if you're on campus, will be on shelves Friday. But on the website, we each have features about the team. Caleb, I just published one, is about St. Paul VI in Virginia, how that school has produced some Blue Devil legends, Jeremy Roach, Trevor Keels, and then two of these guys, Darren Harris and Pat Ngangba. We have stuff about player profiles. We have Duke basketball history. If you're a Duke basketball history nerd, you will absolutely love this print edition. I wrote one about the NBA Global Academy, which has produced Kamen Malawach and Tyrese Proctor. So much great content out on the website that'll be out these next few days. And then our women's basketball preview as well coming up in these next few days. Coach Carol Lawson will look to get her team back past the Sweet 16. They have a really good roster, and they're going to be loaded as well. So definitely check all that out. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back after the Kentucky game in a few weeks to kind of recap that and preview the next few big ones in November. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been the Cameron Chronicles.